In this landing page from scratch video, I'm gonna show you how to make a resume page. Hi, I'm Hanne from Thrive Teams, and in this tutorial we're gonna see how you can build a resume page. So this can be very helpful if you are a freelancer or if you are looking for a new job. But you will also learn some cool tricks, and I will give you some tips on how to use Thrive Architect and how to create these landing pages faster. So let's get started right away. First of all, let me show you this resume page. As you can see, we have a very interesting header image, and then we have these boxes that are sections for each part of the resume. This template is now available in Thrive Architect. So if you don't have time to build it yourself, then you can just simply load it up and get started with it right away. But if you want to discover how to build this type of layout, then keep watching. To build this landing page from scratch, go to your website, create a new page, and then click on the Edit with Thrive Architect. From here you can see that I have a normal WordPress page on my website, so you can do this with any WordPress theme available. Go to Page Setup, change the landing page templates, and we are gonna pick the blank template to start from. This is also where you will find the template if you just want to load it on your site. So choose template. Now, the very first thing that I will do to show you how to set up this page correctly is simply copy this heading element a few times so that I can show you what a header 2 would look like. So this would be a header 2, a header 3, and then we don't need another header, but we need a paragraph element. Now, the very first thing that we want to do that will save you so much time if you set it up correctly is go to your page settings. So again, in page setup, now we can see that we have the landing page settings. And from here, the very first thing that we can pick is our landing page options. And as you can see here on the landing page, this is like a boxed template. So we have a background, and then we have these white boxes that are smaller than the actual background. So the easiest way to set this up is in our landing page options to actually set this content width to 960. So this will allow us to have a smaller width on the page. Now in background style, we can pick the background color of our landing page. The next thing we want to do is go to landing page fonts, and from here we can actually edit the fonts that will be used on this landing page. So this will allow you to always have the same heading 2 or heading 3 or paragraph style, and it will allow you not to change the fonts and the size of the fonts every time that you add a new element. Because if you just start from a blank template, then it will automatically copy the fonts of your own theme. As you can see here, this is inherit from the theme. And so in the case of this theme, it is Lato. So we want to change this. The first thing is click on change, and from here we pick Google Fonts. And the font I want is Montserrat. 300, and then the bold can be 600. So let's apply this. We can also set the font size here. So in our case, it's 24. And we can set the line height. So let's do that too. Now for our paragraph, again, you can see that this is inherited from the theme. So we do exactly the same. Let's pick hint 400 and bold 600. Let me quickly do this for heading 2 and 3. Now we finished setting the fonts. So let's start building this page. Let's go to our elements and pick the background section. As you can see, this background section is automatically the same width as we decided on the landing page level. So that's one of the biggest advantages of restricting the width on landing page level. You don't have to do it for every element again. Now, as you can see here, the background sections are like these white boxes, and that is what we are going to build now. So let's select this background section again and give it a background color. So in background style, you can go to the color picker, and from here, let's pick white. We'll also add padding into this element. And instead of having to put padding all around, I can just click on this middle icon, which then links the paddings. And so now I can just type only once 40. And as you can see, it will do 40 all around. Don't forget to unlink these again, because if not, next time that you use the element, it might act a little bit weird, because then if you start dragging margins, then it will drag it all around. So that can be a bit confusing. And we also want at the end to have a 50 margins. So this will allow us to have the spacing in between the boxes as we want. Now there's one last thing that we want to do with this box, and that is add a drop shadow. So from here in the shadow menu, you can pick a drop shadow, so that's the shadow on the exterior side of the box. And if you pick an inner shadow, then this will be inside the box. But in our case, we want a drop shadow. So from here, we want the black, but we only want it to be really very transparent. So only pick 4% its opacity. So this will be like a super subtle shadow. So 4, and then we have a 24 blur. Now, as you can see, you can almost not see it, but it gives this little bit more depth to the page, and that's why we set it up. And we'll only have to do this once, because then we can just copy the background sections. Now inside this element, you can see that we have this title section, a divider, then a second title, and then depending on the box, we have different elements. But these first elements are there on every box. So let's put these in. This is our first heading, and we are actually gonna make this all uppercase. So in text options, you can see something text transform, it's called, and from here we can click on the uppercase. So this will automatically transform in uppercase, and now each time that you type something in here, so for example my skills, it will be in uppercase automatically. The next element is a divider, and one of the big advantages of Thrive Architect is that you can just search for an element, so let's do that. When you start typing divider, you will find it. We want this divider to be green. So I already saved this color. When you have a color that you know that you will use multiple times on the page, you can click on this plus icon, and then it will add this color to the favorites. And as you can see here, you also have a less and more menu. So this will allow you to have a whole bunch of colors. And if you click on list, then you only have the most recent colors available. So from here, let's select our green, apply it, and we only want this to be 1 pixel. And we also want it to be a bit closer to this title. So let's put something like 10 pixels padding. The next element is this title. So we already have it here. This is our heading 2 title. So let's just drag it into the box. And so here, this should be professional skills. Now, as you can see, these 3 elements, the title, the divider, and the subheading, are the same for every box. So now we can basically copy paste this box so that we have it for each and every layout that we want. So let's do that now. So from here, we can just make sure that we select the background section. So if you're not sure, you can just click on one of the elements inside the box, and then here in the breadcrumbs, go to background section, and then we can copy this. So now, as you can see, we already start to see how the page will look like. For this first box, we actually want 2 columns. So we want the welcome column and then the basic information. And at the very end, we will build this header element. To get the 2-column layout, you can either drag elements next to each other. So you could copy this title and then drag it next to each other. And this will make 2 columns, or you can add a column element. So from here, let's just drag things into the column layout. And we want this divider here too. And the subheading. So now this is welcome. From here you can play with the width of the columns. So you can make columns larger or smaller just by dragging it around. And now we simply want this first line to be bold and also in our green. And we want to increase the line height on this one a little bit. And here for this text element, we want to increase the line height so that there's a little bit more space in between the elements. So we can put this to like 2. Now there's one last thing that we want to change in this first block, and that is here you can see that the text is very close to this other column. So there are several ways that we can change this, but the way we want to do this here is by adding some gutter width, and this will push the columns a bit further from each other and will give us some more spacing in between. Now in the second box we have this 4-column layout with an image and then a subheading and then some text. Let's build that now. So this is our second section. We want to add columns in here, a 4-column layout. And from here, the very first thing that I will do is I will add a content box into this column layout. Now, this is not something that you have to do. You can make the exact same layout without adding the content box. But one of the big advantages of having a content box is that you will be able to duplicate the complete layout. So you will soon see why I'm doing this. So first of all, again, I linked all the paddings and the same for the margins, so that I can just put 0 all around by only typing 0 once. So unlink this. And now the very first thing I want in this content box is our image. So let's drag our image in there. First of all, we want to center align this image. So in our layout and positioning, in the alignment, we can center align it. And we want to have our heading, and this is actually a heading 3. That's why I saved it here. So we can drag this to be underneath it. And then we can also center align this. So for a heading, we can use the alignments here in the text. And then add a paragraph. And center align this paragraph. Now we want to have this exact layout 4 more times. So let's just copy this 3 more times. And this is why it is so handy to have this content box, because now we can just select the content box and we have all the elements that are inside. So you have the image and the title and the paragraph all together. And now if you want to change it, you can just click on the change image and then here select another image. Now this next section is actually exactly the same as the one before. We have a title and an image in a column layout. So what we can do is just simply copy the elements from above. So let's do that. So from here, let's copy this complete box. We can change the text. And from here, we want the heading to be above the image. We don't need the text, so we can just delete this and we can change the image again and pick the image we want. Now, this is still inside our content box, so we can simply copy and paste it into the column layouts. So let's do that. So from here, we can select the content boxes and delete them. So we are still keeping the columns, and now we can just drag these content boxes in here. Now here, as you can see, we have a 4-column layout and we actually want a 5-column layout. So the easiest way to do this is we simply select this content box and then we can drag it next to here to create a new column. So this is how you can very easily create a 5-column layout if you only had 4 columns, or of course this is something that you can do with any number of columns you have. Now in the next box we have this nice looking content boxes that really stand out with the title element and then the colored background. So let's create that one now. For this, let's start by putting a 3-column layout in here. And first of all, let's put a content box in here again. Let's put all the margins to 0 and all the paddings to 0 and give this content box a color. Now from here, we want the title element. So for that, let's pick a content box, put it inside here. Now we want this to be aligned with the other content elements. So as you can see, we have 20 margins. So this should be 0 at the top. And we also don't want any padding. So let's put this to 0 too. From here, we can give it a background color. And we want a text element in there. This text element should be white. aligned in the center. And we can give some padding around this text element. So if we go back to our content box, let's put a 20 pixel padding on the top and on the bottom. So this gives our title element. Now underneath the title element, we have these subheadings and then a paragraph element. So as you can see, there's this padding around the element, so all the way around it. So the easiest way to build this will be to put another content box in here. So let's pick our content box again, drag it in here. And we want to give this a 20 padding all around and no margins. Now we can put our heading element in there. And this is a heading 3 and a text element in green, and then a normal text element. And in between here, we will have some more spacing, so we can give this a 20 top spacing. Now, when you create this type of layouts with different content boxes and so on, before copying it, I suggest that you always check the mobile view so that you can see what it looks like on smaller screens. So first of all, on a tablet, this looks good. And then when we check on mobile, we can see here that this also looks good. But as you can see, these columns are stacked one against the other. So if we want more space, we will have to add some more spacing on top. So here we could go to the different column elements and immediately add some margins, or we can wait until we check everything on mobile and then add margins at that point. So now for this content box, so when you click on it, make sure to take the outer content box. So that's where the breadcrumbs comes in very handy, and copy this one twice. And now we can simply drag it into the columns next to it. And this is how we will get our 3-column layout. Now our next section is this education section. And as you can see, we have a line here. And then we also have a divider line in between these elements. And this is a 2-column layout. So let's build this now. First, we're going to start by putting a column layout in here and select a 2-column layout. And let's start with a 50-50 column layout. Now first we have a text element, and this text element is uppercase, and this is where we can put the date. Next we have a heading, so we can just copy it from here. And then again we have a text element, and it's also like this green element, so we can just copy this one too. And let's add some text in the other column. And we can drag this to be more like a 40-60 layout. And from here, when we go to borders and corners, we can select the left border and give this the green color we want. We can select the bottom border and make this like this dotted line and pick a light gray. Now, if we want this to be closer to the text, you can see that the columns element have a padding of 15, so we could make this closer together. And now we can copy this element. So select the columns layout and copy this. Now, to get the effect of the line continuing, we can select this column layout, and you can see that we have a 10 pixel top margin, and we can put this to 0. And on the other element, we probably have a bottom margin, so we have to put this to 0 too. And now these two elements are touching, and so we have the effect of the line going through. As you can see, there's one more thing that we have to fix, because now the text is really like squashed to this side, and that's not really nice. So when we select the text element, we can go to the column, and here we can put a padding in there, so that the text gives a little more space away from this border. And of course, if we had done this before copying the element, it would have been done on every element. But we only have 2, so let's quickly do this. Add a 20 pixel padding here too. And let's copy this one more time. We still have a bottom margin here. And now on this last element, we actually don't want this border here anymore. So we can select again, make sure to be in the columns. And then when we go to the borders here, if we go to the bottom border, you can just select none, and this will make the border disappear. And this is how you can get this nice looking graphic layout with the divider lines. Now the portfolio section on this page is nothing special. It's just images in a column layout. But I want to show you something that you can do when people click on these images. So let me do that now. To get a nice looking image layout like this, you will have to crop your images. But one of the biggest advantages is that when you click on an image, you can actually select that you want to open the full-size image on click. So this means that you can have a small image on your site and then you can show the full image the moment somebody clicks on it. But once you click on this, there's something else that you can do that's even smarter, especially if you make this nice looking layout. Because here you might not be able to show like the real image. Maybe you made like a special thumbnail for this image. And in that case, when you click on the image, so if you selected this open full-size image on click and you go to animations and actions, you can see that on click, it opens an image. And then when you go to edit here, you can actually change the image from here. So you can choose another image. So this means that you can have on click open any image. So let me show you. When you now go to this portfolio, you can see that when you click here, this will actually open another image. And so this allows you to have good looking thumbnail images and then have the full image on click. And especially for a portfolio, this can be very helpful. Now, our next layout is this testimonial layout. And this is also something that you can do from scratch. But this is typically one of those elements that takes a bit more time, so you probably don't want to do this yourself. You can just use our templates. And you can save this as a content template so that you can actually save it and use it somewhere else on your website. But let me show you how this is done from scratch. So let's copy again this element and just delete the columns here. In Thrive Architect, you have a testimonial element where you can find several designs that are already done. So from here, but for this landing page, I want to show you how to do them from scratch. To add testimonials on your page, you actually have several options with Thrive Architect. When you search for testimonials, you can see that in the building blocks, you have a building block that is called testimonials. So from here, you will be able to select from templates that are already pre-built. And if you have Thrive Ovation installed, you actually also have the possibility to display Thrive Ovation testimonials. So Thrive Ovation is our all-in-one testimonial plugin, and this will allow you to, instead of copy pasting and having to look for pictures and all of that, to simply import the testimonials that you have in the Thrive Ovation database. So from here you could just display testimonials, and then you can select one of the many templates that are available and customize those templates. But I also want to show you that you can really build everything from scratch with Thrive Architect. So let's do that right now. Let's put this 3-column layout in here. And let's start by adding a content box. Now this content box has a border, so let's go to the borders and corners and all around. And here it's one of these green colors. Now this also has some rounded corners. So when you go to the rounded corners here, we can add something like 4 pixels probably. That gives us a bit of a rounded edge. And we can add our text in there. And to make this text not stick to the edges so much in the content box, we can actually give this a 20 pixel padding. Now in order to get the quotes in this testimonial, we're going to use an icon. So let's drag an icon in here and let's select the quote. Make this 20 pixel and a lightish blue. And now to get this quote to float next to the text, we will first take out the top and bottom margin, make it left aligned, and then ask to float. So So from here, as you can see, it's now floating next to the text, and we need to add a little more padding to avoid that it's like too close to the text. Now we can do the same with the quote in the other direction. So again, let's add an icon. Select the quotes, make it 20 pixels, select this blue. In this case, we're going to right align it and no margins. And let's float. And here, to make it float next to the text, we'll actually have to move it up a little bit so we can add some negative margin to make it next to the text. So let's put a 20 pixel negative margin here. The next element in our testimonial box is this image, and then we have the title. As you can see, this is a square image, and what we will do is we will first add a border around this. So a border all around of 3 pixels and of our green. And now we will actually add rounded corners, but not all around. We're gonna start with the bottom one, and then this one, and this one too. And now we have this nice looking layout for the image. So as you can see, we did this without Photoshop, without any editing tools, simply in Thrive Architect. Now I just see that this quote is underneath it, so I'm gonna make sure to drag it above so that it stays next to our text. And we want next to this image to have 2 lines of text. So that's first one. And now we want this image to be laid out on the border of this quote box, of this testimonial box. In order to do this, you have to select the columns. Let's first already take out the margins and the paddings here. And now we can just add a negative bottom margin. So this will drag the element on the edge. And actually I want a margin on top so the text isn't too close. And here in this column we want this text a bit lower, so in this column I can add a top padding on here. Now before we copy this element, let's make sure that this actually looks good on tablet and on mobile, because this is typically the kind of layout that you might have to adapt a little bit to make sure that it still looks good. So on tablet, this looks good, but as you can see, we will have to add a bottom margin. So let's do that first. And on mobile, let's put this inside the box instead of on top of it and center align it. Now that we know that it looks good on all screens, we can copy this content box. So let's copy and drag it next to each other. Now the next element is our reference boxes. And as you can see, we have this photo element, and then we have some text, and everything is wrapped into this content box. That's what I'm going to show you now. Let's start with a 2-column layout. Let's put a content box in here. This content box has to be light blue. In this content box, we want an image. And next to this image, we want text. Now, as you can see, this is the basis of the content box, but we still have too many margins and paddings around all of these elements. So first of all, let's look in the columns. So here, as you can see, we have margins and we have paddings. So let's link everything and put this to 0. Now I want to do the same with this image, because here too we still have margins on top and on the bottom. And this is how we can obtain this effect of having the image and the box that is exactly the same size. Now in this column element, we can add some padding around, because now the text really goes until the edge and here on top also. So I don't think this looks very good. Maybe 20 is too much. We can have 10. And we can play around a little bit with the size of the columns here. Now let's center align this. And let's see what this looks like on mobile and tablet first. So on tablet, I probably want this to wrap already so that it looks good. And I want this image to be center aligned. And then this should look good on mobile. This looks pretty good. So now we can copy this element. And we want to copy the outer content box. And we need this 4 times. And now we have our 4 references here, and you can just click on the image and change the image. Now we have one last section to finish for this landing page, and that is our Get in Touch section. So as you can see here, we have again this line effect and then with icons and circles around it. So let me show you how that is done. To get this effect, you want to use a 3-column layout. And we want this gutter width, so the width in between the columns, to be 0 pixels. That is how we will get the line to continue over the whole columns. Now let's add a content box in here. This is very handy for copy pasting the elements. And now we want the top border of this content box to be green. So let's go to the borders and corners, click on the top border, put a 1 pixel and make this green. Inside we have 2 paragraphs of text. This is phone number and center line. And then we have the phone number. Let's put this in bold and also center align. And then we want the icon to overlap with the border. So let's pick the icon, put it in here, and choose the phone icon. Let's pick this one. Now we want this icon to be smaller, probably something like 20 pixels, maybe 25. Use our green. And now we want to have a circle around this icon. And the way to do this is to give it a border, first of all. And then we want this border to be round, so 100 pixels. But as you can see now, this gives a border really around the icon. See, we want some more space in between the line and the icon. And this is where you need to add padding. So here let's add 10 pixel padding. And this will allow us to have this nice circle around the icon. And we also want to make the background white. The reason for this is that when we will overlap this icon, so when we start putting a negative margin in here, we don't want the line to be shown. So we need this to be white to get this effect. On this content box, I will add some top margin. Because of the negative margin on the icon, it becomes really close to this text. So I will add some top margin to give it some more space. And now we will be able to copy this content box and paste it into the next columns. So copy, let's do this twice. And then we can drag this content box next to each other. And from here, we will be able to change the icon. So let's make this an email. And this is our Skype icon. So let's look for Skype. Now that we are finished with our page, let's make the heading. Now, as you can see, this is a pretty complex heading because we have a picture and then we have an overlay, some text, and then this little box there. So let me show you how this is done. First, let's drag a new background section in here. And in this background section, we will add our image. Now, when you are uploading images in Thrive Architect, make sure to here in the size to have selected full size, because if not, it will load a smaller image and your images will look blurry. So insert this into the post and we want this to center. Apply. And from here, we want to make sure that we can see the full image. So let's make sure that this section minimum height is something like this. So let's make this 540. Now the next element we want on there is the green arrow. So for this, let's add a content box on this background image. Let's make this smaller and let's make it a minimum width of the same width of this image. So this was 540. Now we want this background to be green. And in order to have this arrow effect, we want to add decorations. So let's go to the decorations tab, click on the right side, and we want this to be a pointer. Now here the width, we want to set it to 100% so that it goes over the full width of the content container. And then let's add some height in here, something like this, that looks pretty okay. And in the meantime, let's make sure that we have 0 here because I can see a little pixel of padding, which I find very annoying. Okay, now in our content box, we want the title. This has to be white. And much, much bigger. Probably something like 90 pixels, probably not too bad. And to get this effect of having one word per line, you don't want to add breaks in there because then you're not sure how it will look like on different screen sizes. So what you want to do is you want to restrict the max width of this element in order to make it jump. Now here our line height is a bit too much. I want this closer together. And now I want this element to be a bit lower. So as you can see here, I saw that this started moving from all sides, and this is because my element was still linked. So let's make sure to unlink this, link this margins, and then I can drag this down. And I also want this to be further from the border. So from here, I can probably in my content box, I could add a 50 padding. I could add some padding so that it comes further along. So this looks pretty good. Now we have one line of text underneath here. And now we still have our high box. So for this, we're gonna add a new content box in here. Let's immediately give this a background color. Put a text element in there. With our text high. This text element should be white. And this can be bigger. And now we want to restrain the width of this content box. So for that, let's select our content box again. And here we can have the maximum width that we want to be much smaller. So probably something like 70 or even smaller, 50. 50 looks good, and let's center align our text. Now in order to get this box where we want it to, we would have to change the position of this content box, and to make sure that this always stays where we want it to, even on other screens, we want to choose a position absolute. So this will be positioned in function of the box around it. And when we edit the position, so we can edit it from the corner of this content box, and we can make it higher up so that it stays on the edge. So now there's one more thing. It's like very squashed into this content box. So let's add a little bit more line height. And let's add some padding around here. This looks pretty good. Let's see what this looks like on tablet. As you can see, this stays in the same position. Now to correct this pointer, let's click on the content box and let's change the maximum width of this box to be a little smaller, like this, so that we can see the face of Jason. So here we could actually make a header that is specific for mobile. So let's do that now, because let me show you on mobile what this will look like. So here there's like no way that we can get this picture to be nice and look good on mobile. So when we go to desktop, one thing that we could do is underneath this header, we could actually add an image. So let's pick our background image, and above it we can set a content box. Let's make 0 margin around this content box. Make this a green box, so the background color should be green. And now around this image too, we can make sure that there are no paddings around this image or no margins. And now we can simply, let's copy this paragraph here, so this text, and drag it into the content box. And instead, let's make this full width again, center align it, and let's do the same with this one. We can copy it, put it underneath this text, also center align it. And this high box too, so let's select the content box, copy this, and then drag it in here. And now we can actually center align this. So instead of a position absolute, we can make this position relative, and we can center align this, and then we just have to adjust the paddings a little bit. So probably don't need that much padding, and we can make this maximum width a bit smaller, 60. This text should be center aligned. And let's just play with the margins a little bit so that we can actually put it on the edge. Now what we want to do, because now we basically have 2 headings, right? What we want to do is we want to hide this background section on mobile. So when you go to your responsive menu, you can hide this one on mobile. And we want this 2 elements, so the content box, we want this to be hidden on desktop and on tablet. And the same with this image. We want it to be hidden on desktop and on tablet. So now our page looks exactly the same on desktop. But when we go to our mobile view, you can actually see that we have the image and this content box. Now we'll have to change it a little bit because I just added stuff while being in desktop mode. So now we can actually adjust this to make it look good on mobile. So from here, let's make this smaller. And let's adjust the margins here. And maybe this should be a little smaller too. And then there we can add a little bit bottom margin. And so now this is how our header section would look like on mobile. So we still have the really cool effect with the pointer here on desktop. And then once we go to mobile, we have something that is actually mobile optimized. Now I hope you liked this landing page from scratch tutorial and that you learned something new while following along. And of course, like I told you, this template is available in Thrive Architect. So if you have Thrive Architect installed, you can simply load it onto your page and start editing it right away. And of course, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below this video.